We're waiting on official 6 o'clock time. And if you're wondering, it looks like the United Nations up here. We have both councils. So after we swear in the new ones, those departing will be leaving, and then the meeting will be conducted with the new council in place.
They told me we're going to talk.
Madam Clerk, are we at 6 o'clock?
Not
Not quite.
30 seconds.
30 seconds.
Six o'clock.
Thank you very much. Everybody ready? Let me call to order the Tuesday, November 12th meeting of Mount Pleasant Town Council. It is 6 o'clock, and we are where we said we would be when we said we would be here. The agenda is before you. The first item is a prayer by Reverend Rob Dewey. After that, I would ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. We want to thank all of our veterans, and our Pledge of Allegiance tonight will be led by our council veteran, Joe Bustos, after the prayer. So, Chaplain Dewey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let us pray. We do thank you, Heavenly Father, for the veterans, all that are here, and still all those that are protecting us right now. We thank you for this town that each one of us live and have the honor of living in. It's such a true honor to live where folks seek your face, Heavenly Father. We thank you for those who continue to serve and those that are serving their last night here, but we know that they will still be close. We thank you for those that you have called forth now to be sworn in this evening. We ask your special blessings upon them and their family as we move forward to make this even a better place to live. In your holy and blessed name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 3 is approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the agenda as the motion stated, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The agenda is approved. Item 4 is public hearings, awards, and presentations. We'll begin with the administration of the oath to town council members. And those present, we will go in the order that it is listed. So if y'all will do that, and we'll start with Mr. Chapman up front.
I got one in my car.
Good job, Christine.
For everyone at home. Is this good? Are we good? All right, please place your hand on the Bible and raise your hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I am duly qualified,
that I am duly qualified,
according to the Constitution of this state,
according to the Constitution of this state,
to exercise the duties of the office
to exercise the duties of the office
to which I have been elected,
to which I have been elected,
and that I will, to the best of my ability,
and I will, to the best of my ability,
discharge the duties thereof,
discharge the duties thereof,
and preserve, protect, and defend
and preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution of this state and of the United States.
the Constitution of this state and the United States.
As a council member of the town of Mount Pleasant,
As a council member of the town of Mount Pleasant,
I will equally, fairly, and impartially
as a council member of the town of Mount Pleasant, I will equally, fairly, and impartially,
to the best of my ability and skill,
to the best of my ability and skill,
exercise the trust reposed in me,
exercise the trust reposed in me,
and I will use my best endeavors
and I will use my best endeavors
to preserve the peace
to preserve the peace
and carry into effect, according to law,
and carry into effect according to law
the purposes for which I have been elected.
the purposes for which I have been elected.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Mayor.
The pin that we all wear to remind us that you sent us here and we represent you, and this council and these seats belong to you, and you have loaned them to us for a while. It's my privilege to give you that.
Thank you, Mayor. Very
Thank you. Did you get some with my glasses on? Got it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Brenda Corley. All right. Move around this way just a little bit. And raise your hands. Brenda Corley, I do solemnly swear
Do I have to say it in your accent? I do solemnly swear
that I am duly qualified,
that I am duly qualified,
according to the Constitution of this state,
according to the Constitution of this state,
to exercise the duties of the office
to exercise the duties of the office
to which I have been elected,
to which I have been elected,
and that I will, to the best of my ability,
and that I will, to the best of my ability,
discharge the duties thereof,
discharge the duties thereof,
and preserve, protect, and defend
and preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution of this state and of the United States.
the Constitution of this state and of the United States.
As a council member of the town of Mount Pleasant,
As a council member of the town of Mount Pleasant,
I will equally, fairly, and impartially,
I will equally, fairly, and impartially,
to the best of my ability and skill,
to the best of my ability and skill,
exercise the trust reposed in me,
exercise the trust reposed in me,
and I will use my best endeavors
and I will use my best endeavors
to preserve the peace
to preserve the peace
and carry into effect, according to law,
and carry into effect, according to law,
the purposes for which I have been elected.
the purposes for which I have been elected.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And there's the photographer. Get used to it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Laura Hyatt. Thank you. There we go. How special. That's wonderful. If y'all will come turn this way a little bit, raise your other hand. This is Laura Hyatt. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I am duly qualified,
that I am duly qualified,
according to the Constitution of this state,
according to the Constitution of this state,
to exercise the duties of the office
to exercise the duties of the office
to which I have been elected,
to which I have been elected,
and that I will, to the best of my ability,
and that I will, to the best of my ability,
discharge the duties thereof,
discharge the duties thereof,
and preserve, protect, and defend
and preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution of this state and of the United States.
the Constitution of this state and of the United States.
As a council member of the town of Mount Pleasant,
As a council member of the town of Mount Pleasant,
I will equally, fairly, and impartially,
I will equally, fairly, and impartially,
to the best of my ability and skill,
to the best of my ability and skill,
exercise the trust reposed in me,
exercise the trust reposed in me,
and I will use my best endeavors
and I will use my best endeavors
to preserve the peace
to preserve the peace
and carry into effect, according to law,
and carry into effect, according to law,
the purposes for which I have been elected.
the purposes for which I have been elected.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. Thank you. Jake Rambo. Jake has the largest family here, and they're all seated together. And The city of Charleston has Rainbow Row, but tonight Mount Pleasant has Rambo Row. Fantastic. Good. All right, move over this way just a little so you're right in this. All right. All right. Jake Rambo, I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I am duly qualified,
that I am duly qualified,
according to the Constitution of this state,
according to the Constitution of this state,
to exercise the duties of the office
to exercise the duties of the office
to which I have been elected,
to which I have been elected,
and that I will, to the best of my ability,
and that I will, and that I will, to the best of my ability,
discharge the duties thereof,
discharge the duties thereof,
and preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution of this state,
the Constitution of this state
and of the United States.
and of the United States.
As a council member of the town of Mount Pleasant,
As a council member of the town of Mount Pleasant,
I will equally, fairly, and impartially,
I will equally, fairly, and impartially,
to the best of my ability and skill,
to the best of my ability and skill,
exercise the trust reposed in me,
exercise the trust reposed in me,
and I will use my best endeavors
and I will use my best endeavors
to preserve the peace
to preserve the peace
and carry into effect, according to law,
and carry into effect, according to law,
the purposes for which I have been elected.
the purposes for which I have been elected,
So help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations. I'll hand you your pen and then make sure we get a picture with all of you. Y'all come get a picture with Dad. There you go.
And the mayor.
Yes, sir.
We'll now have a 10-minute recess so families can talk and take pictures, and then we'll reconvene in 10 minutes.
I wonder who's going to sit next to me. I'm curious.
I think we got this land. I don't want to say anything until you say you're comfortable. So one of my goals is I'd like to go to the Chamber of Commerce to sponsor the sign. I don't want to say anything.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, very good. Thank you, Captain.
That's right.
How's it going, by the way?
Yeah.
I can't remember.
See, my goal is, the Chamber of Commerce, they have that function every once a month. And they recognize first responders.
Just everybody trying to plug in for whatever. Comment, quote.
Then they sponsor a sign or something. I don't want to say nothing to them until you. Okay.
Before then, I'll let you know that
I agree, man. I'd like to see it in writing.
Gentlemen, all right.
Great working with you. Hopefully work with you more again. It's gonna be tough. Anyway, see, I haven't said anything before you give me the okay. Last thing I want to do is.
I don't either. I don't want you to look at me.
Well, I know how to deal with this. It took them 4 months to give me the 11 acres at the park down there, so I was like chomping at the bit.
What's that? Oh yeah. Yeah, I gotta. I'll put you on the thing. I'll
Too
write
late
it
to
down.
back out now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Face the crowd when I read this, you think, or? I'll face down. I want you not to look at
I'm sorry.
Okay, good. So that's, okay, so yes, that's the second thing. Yeah, so, that's the parents, Perry and Karen, and her sister Carmen.
I feel like I'm more than enough and.
Because Tom
Everything was really good. And you got all my team calling, which is great. That's a big call for all of them. It's so good. It's like, even a couple of like good.
Tom O'Rourke. It's okay. I did it once, it's fine. That's what's going to happen. I don't know who's behind. I don't know. Apple's sitting next to you, so it might be connected. That's just one less thing She was the one who was telling me you need to do it, you need to do it.
Good luck tonight. Thank you.
It's one less thing. We've got a good group on here. I think it's good.
Feeling better?
I'm gonna run use the bathroom real quick.
I am not represent any government. These titles represent. I'm not specifically towards the county. I represent. The Charleston County Legislature.
Yeah. Let me just get my glasses.
Job. I thought it was. I'm a member of law. I now am a
Member at large, being a citizen, no other legislative. Yeah, we're gonna have to read this. We're starting to get some opinions from the state, mostly agents.
Because I used to be next to Tom. Yeah. The mayor, I don't know, the mayor, she picks our, the mayor.
All right, we'll
Thank
talk
you.
about that.
Thanks.
We have that.
I figured you would.
I don't know. I didn't even think about that. If you want to send an email, I can forward it. For all of us.
Oh, are you with us? Are you with me? You, oh, perfect. I knew it was gonna be one of us right there. Miss Gordon, I'm David, how are you?
Nice to meet you.
I have,
Take a piece, use something and wash your hands after this question.
I know you're, I'm out front. Among all the 10,000 pages that we have, I just want to make sure you are comfortable and get out to the
Okay, perfect, yes.
So, I'm sure, excuse me, those are all procedural
Okay.
things.
I'm gonna go blow my nose.
Set up some time.
Yes, ma'am. Well, I'm gonna go blow my nose.
Okay. Not quite ready. After the mayor pro tem, then, do we go around front? Okay, we ready? All right, we have reconvened, and the clerk will make note of the time. I appreciate everybody. That's one of the best things of this whole experience is swearing in those who've been elected to serve. We are at item 4C on the agenda. Next is election of mayor pro tem. It is by ordinance, I believe, 2-year terms, and it is by nomination, and I've discussed with staff that we can do this. We can either have one name or we can have multiple names and vote as for your preference as those names are called. It's not an up or down on one nomination, then an up or down on another. So names that are placed or name that can be placed in nomination, we will conduct the vote on that. So if there are any nominations from the floor, please proceed. Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion that Tom O'Rourke be elected mayor pro tem.
We have a motion to nominate Tom O'Rourke for mayor pro tem. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Are there any other nominations? I think we need to, everybody make sure their microphone is turned on, please. Any further nominations? Going once, going twice. All right, I guess the nominations are closed. We're prepared to vote. All those in favor of Tom O'Rourke for mayor pro tem, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Mr. O'Rourke is our new pro tem. Mr. Santos, I want to thank you for 4 long years. Yeah, 4 years. All right, thank you very much. I think you had to preside one time when I was sick with laryngitis last year. Right. So, all right. So this next item is item 4D, presentation of Kevin Williamson Awards. Do we need to go around front?
Mayor, and if council members, if you would join me out front, please. Okay, Mayor, council members, good evening. Item 4D on the agenda next is the presentation of the Kevin Williamson Awards, and Councilman Santos is going to lead us in that. Sir?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We are proud to announce this evening the winners of the Mount Pleasant Recreation Department's new annual football honor, the Kevin Williamson Sportsmanship of the Year Award. Kevin Williamson thrived in team sports throughout his life. He played many sports while forging meaningful friendships with teammates and coaches alike. He was a lifetime participant in several of Mount Pleasant Recreation Department's athletic programs. During his years at Wando High School, he played offensive line on the football team, the sport that always had his heart. He received his varsity letter in the 10th grade and continued to compete during his career at Guilford College. After graduating from college, Kevin returned to the Charleston area. Unfortunately, in September 2016, he was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer. Despite the prognosis, he continued to preserve and maintain a positive attitude and live a full life. He married the love of his life, Lauren, in 2017, amid the fiercest battle of his life. Just 22 months after his diagnosis, Kevin passed away at 28 years of age. Kevin was kind, he was humble and courageous. Looking at his life, his love of sports is weaved through his story. He was the embodiment of teamwork, determination, hard work, and sportsmanship. The acknowledgement of these attributes, the Kevin Williamson Sportsman of the Year Award recognizes one flag and one tackle football player from the 2019 season. This award honors those recognized displaying sportsmanship, teamwork, love of sport, and competition. Coaches provided written nominations to Mount Pleasant Recreation Department staff. These were reduced to 3 finalists from each group and presented to the Williamson family to determine the award winners. Joining us this evening are Kevin's parents, Mary Louise and Kevin Williamson Sr., their son Patrick, Kevin's wife Lauren, and her parents Perry and Karen, and her sister Carmen Grice. Also joining us is Coach Will Carlisle and Coach Sean Belcher, who nominated the 2 fine young men receiving the awards this evening. At this time, I'd like to invite my good friend Johnny Dodds up to say a few words. Johnny was instrumental in working with us to get this done. So Johnny, if you'd come up and say a few words, please.
I also brought my handkerchief because I'm not so sure I'm going to be able to get through this either. Kevin was a neighbor and a friend. And to see the pictures of him up there, he's a pretty big fella, but he was a gentle giant. I first heard the name Kevin Williamson, I think it was Pee Wee football. They were playing the Jamboree, and I was on the other side of the field, and this one young boy kept scoring touchdowns, and he was fast as daylights. I mean, he'd get the ball, and he'd score a touchdown. I said, good Lord, who is this guy? And it was Kevin Williamson, and little did I know that in a few years, we would be neighbors. So Kevin was my neighbor, and he was my friend. I see over there, Chief, you remember this young man. I think you might have been coaching him at that time. But when Kevin was diagnosed with cancer, he was the epitome of courage. Never been to war, never been in the military. Don't know what it is to face that sort of scourge. But I can tell you, he never, ever, ever gave up. And he never, ever, ever complained. With no pity. It was all about concern for the people that he loved. His wife, his in-laws, his parents, his brother. And it is altogether fitting that the town and the recreation department, and thank all of you, would honor Kevin in this way, because he is a tremendous role model. I can't wait to see the young men who are going to receive this award, because I tell you, it's a commendation to those 2 individuals to be awarded a trophy in the name of Kevin Williamson. Thank you very much.
At this time, I'd like to ask Steve Gerget to come up from the Recreation Department to present the award.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
This is an honor to be able to recognize these two young men. Ramsey Saylor is our first award recipient in the flag football division. As his coach, Coach Carlisle writes in the nomination, Ramsey impressed me by comforting an opponent who went down hurt. He has shown similar compassion toward his own teammates and opponents. He is always respectful of coaches, well-mannered, and never gets frustrated when he or his teammates make mistakes. Ramsey is happy and proud of himself and the team when we do well, but maintains a positive spirit when we're dominated by a better team. As his coach writes, Ramsey just seems to get it. Let's hear it for Ramsey Saylor. All right. You can just stay and bring the other one up too. Our next award winner is Sawyer Hearn. Sawyer Hearn is the winner in the tackle division. Coach Sean Belcher tells us Sawyer is referred to as the gentle giant and is the ultimate teammate. He encourages his teammates and is always first to praise others. Sawyer takes personal responsibility when things don't go well, but deflects praises to teammates when things do go well. Sawyer is aware of his size and takes extra precautions to ensure others do not get hurt. He works hard and perseveres through knee pain to play a game he has come to love and to be accountable to his teammates. How about a nice round of applause for Sawyer Hearn? They are in just a second. I'm going to get the trophies now. All right. Presenting the awards tonight, we have MPRD football coordinator Jay Rhodes and athletic specialist Garrett Hetherington, bringing up the trophies for them. All right. And how would you like to get a picture? They were going to be coming through and say, yeah. Okay.
Up front and get all the council on the picture.
There you go. That is a big trophy.
One, two, three. One, two, three.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
We got some more.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I have the pleasure of presenting a 30-year longevity award to Mr. Lee Cave. Lee Cave is our chief building official and the deputy director of our department. Lee's been involved with ensuring safe buildings for everyone in this community, his hometown, for 3 decades. He had a small business background and experience in electrical work and was employed at East Cooper Hospital when Hurricane Hugo hit. After having to tie himself to the building when going outside to service a part of the mechanical system, he decided that public service might be his calling. He started as an electrical inspector with the town and has moved up ever since. Today, Lee holds the highest certifications under the International Code Council. He is both a master code professional, the gold standard for demonstrating proficiency in the code profession, and a certified building official. He also has a certification as a floodplain manager. He serves as a board member of the South Carolina Safe Home Advisory Committee, which is a mitigation grant program for the Department of Insurance, and is a well-respected member and actively involved in the Building Officials Association of South Carolina and the Coastal Code Enforcement Association. One of Lee's early program accomplishments was taking the town from a probationary status under the National Flood Insurance Program to full participation in the CRS Community Rating System program. This has resulted in significant savings in flood insurance premiums for all of our property owners. But his highest achievement has been the work he has led to get the building division accredited and reaccredited. Our building inspections team is one of only 24 accredited programs in the United States. Beyond code compliance, Lee has been called on to manage several capital improvement projects, like coordinating with Dominion Energy on undergrounding electric lines on Mathis Ferry Road, and he has the chore of shepherding the Memorial Waterfront Park Phase 2 pier extension through its approval and construction. And yes, he has not escaped a leadership role during storms. He's responsible for damage assessment during the town's emergency operations efforts. Daily, Lee applies his common sense, no-nonsense approach when providing service to all customers. He's highly respected by the staff and the community, as known for routinely going above and beyond to help residents, business owners, and contractors resolve issues that are critically important to them and the community. Please join me in recognizing Lee Cave for 30 years of service to the town of Mount Pleasant.
That concludes section number 4 on the agenda. Section 5 is approval of the minutes from the October 28th, 2019 Town Council meeting and the October 2019 financial statement. And just so everyone would know, those of us who were here for the October 8th Town Council meeting have vouched for the minutes to the new council members so that you do not have to misrepresent anything on a vote. So is there a motion that we accept?
Moved. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? All right, all in favor of the motion to approve the minutes and the financial statement, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item number 6 is public comment. You are invited to make your comments. I think people have signed up. Please note the clock that we have here to assist you for your 2 minutes. You get a green, a yellow, and a red. And Mr. Demora, if you will.
Thank you, Mayor. First speaker is Melissa Eckert.
Hi there, my name is Melissa Eckert. I am here on behalf of Old Business Agenda Item Number 3. Gem Restaurant Group is a locally owned and operated business here in Mount Pleasant for over 21 years. Our business owner lives right here in Mount Pleasant for those 21 years. We have worked with Mount Pleasant in numerous development projects that have resulted in employment of 2,860 team members over those years and hundreds of thousands of dollars in impact fees, property taxes, and sales taxes. This project alone, we have had $145,000 in impact fees and $27,000 in property taxes and sales taxes annually. We have complied with all the setbacks and protected wetland restrictions, and because of the poor visibility of our business, we are currently experiencing very low sales that have made our investment difficult to sustain. Currently, we are on track to do $1.1 million at our Taco Bell, where a normal Taco Bell in our group does $1.6 million. So we're $500,000 off of what we have projected. Because of the requirements placed on us by Lowe's corporate office, we're asking Mount Pleasant to help us with this difficult situation and our local business to thrive in the community that we call home. When our agenda item is up for old business number 3, will be available for any questions. Thank you.
Pam Ireland.
Hi, Pam Ireland, 820 Fiddler's Point Lane. I have distributed some materials to you, so I'm not going to reiterate all of that, but I just, with respect to item 9C, which is the reduction of certain of the heights in the building heights plan, I just want to make sure that everyone is clear that the building heights plan stands by itself. It is not incorporated in the comp plan. So I believe since it is a legally binding document or map, that it needs to get addressed right away. There are large swaths that are 80 feet, and I believe the proposal that was being recommended by the planning committee to 65 feet in those 80-foot areas does not go far enough. These are large, large swaths. And in particular, I'm very concerned about the Wingo Way Mathis Ferry area, particularly because there's a very large parcel that is undeveloped and could sell and could have plans submitted at any time. I think it would be a disaster to have 80-foot buildings or even 65-foot buildings all along that swath of property and along Wingo Way. So I would just urge you, if you're not going to do anything about it tonight, to make sure that you act quickly, because every month in the process is another month of delay, and I think it carries great risk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul Peoples.
Yes, I'm Paul Peoples, here to speak on behalf of old business agenda item number 3. We're asking tonight for 2 things, or 3 things. 2 signs that are existing, that if they get hit by a car or are damaged during power company maintenance or whatever, and they get damaged, we can't rebuild them. We're also here to ask for to amend the original sign exhibit that was done in 2011 for Oakland Plantation. This did not account, back when this sign exhibit was done, the out parcel for the Taco Bell did not exist. Once Lowe's was developed, the out parcel came into play, and there was no signage brought in for this. If the parcel were not part of the PUD, then we would have signage by right with the Town of Mount Pleasant Code. Currently, we have a tenant panel that is approximately 600 feet away from our building that is on the existing Lowe's signage out at Oakland Plantation. This is, you can't see it if you're heading north until you're basically past it. You can't see it at all heading south. And we have legal restrictive covenants on the wetlands in front of the parcel, so we can't put it on our property. We're forced to have it off on Lowe's site. And Lowe's is forcing us to have representation of this sign, on this sign. So we can't get the typical monument sign for a fast food restaurant we have to ask for the next size up that was approved in the PUD. So we really, we're stuck with the town because we're in a PUD and we don't have any signage representation. And the signage that we want, Lowe's will not give us unless they have representation. So we really need the middle sign that was approved in the PUD, and we're here if you have any questions.
Jamison Cox?
Thank you, Council. I'm Jamison Cox. I live at 98 Latitude Lane here in Mount Pleasant. I'm here on old business item number 3, which is the Oakland Plantation PD. I represent the landowner, Oakland Plantation Limited Partnership, here in support of the application of Ms. Eckhart spoke of. She was your first speaker. Her request for signage, as well as Mr. Peoples. On behalf of the landowner, we also request that the 2 legal non-conforming signs be reclassified as conforming. Originally, the parcels for which they serve as signage were not part of the plan development. Later, those parcels were brought within the plan development, but by oversight, the signage component was left out. We ask that it be brought in and be reclassified as legal conforming. I'll be available to speak when the item comes up on your agenda, if you need it.
Sarah Johnson?
Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Johnson. My address is 551 Flannery. It is in Mount Pleasant, but if you check, I'm not really in the town, even though I get town water. But I am the chair of the District 2 Constituent School Board, and I'm speaking to y'all on that behalf. Congratulations, new council members. Very exciting. I'm glad I get to see you be sworn in. And if you're not familiar with the Constituent School Board, and we're so confusing over here, Charleston County, there's a big county board. The Constituent School Board is a 5-member elected board. We represent Mount Pleasant, the islands, a little bit of Allendale, a little bit of unincorporated areas. And we're in charge of rezoning, transferring students, and expulsion cases. So we have all the hard stuff to do. I'm here to speak about item 9B, which is the Education Committee's, they want to draft a letter opposing changes to their partial magnet programs. And so I just want you to know that my board did oppose this very strongly. If you looked at the newspaper this morning, these are Mount Pleasant parents opposing in the street, downtown, in front of the school district. And so what is all this about? Just so you know what a partial magnet school is, we have 4 of them over here, 3 in Mount Pleasant, 1 in Sullivan's Island. They are a traditional neighborhood school that has an attendance zone, but they also reserve a few seats for anyone in the county to go. Anyone in our area or North Charleston, anywhere can choose to go there, and there's a reason why for each school. It's not the same reason. And for example, Lang Middle is one. They are the #1 STEM school in the nation. And so that is sort of a school choice thing. We want that available to everyone in the county. So there are different reasons. Other partial magnets rely on, I know my time's getting ready to go out, but anyway, Sullivan's Island must have the magnet to pull in 200 students. It's the only way to get them over the bridge. And so there are just reasons why. And so, I mean, GM, I can get, well, first I thank you, Mayor Haney and GM, for also advocating.
Ms. Johnson.
And let me add,
Yep.
if y'all will be here when we get to that, we can ask y'all questions.
And I'm not, but I have to go, but I will leave this with, one of my board members may be here. But I mean, the main thing is we think that it is a good idea for the town to stand up for, you know, your constituents like we have and like the Charleston County Legislative Delegation has.
Thank you.
Dennis Blythe?
Good evening. I'm Dennis Blythe, 610 Pelzer Drive. Really just first wanted to voice my support for Pam Ireland's discussion about building heights. I'm concerned about that area as well. But tonight, I specifically wanted to congratulate all of our newly elected council people and also those that have been serving us so well for several years now. some more than that, and just ask you to please remember that you represent the best interest of all of the citizens of Mount Pleasant, those that voted for you, those that didn't vote for you, and those that didn't vote at all. I wanted to thank staff for the excellent services that they provide the citizens. We appreciate it greatly. And then I especially wanted to thank a couple of the retiring council people, Bob Bremer for his time always being a very reasoned person, and then Joe Bustos, who unfortunately I believe may have left, but Joe has served us well on many occasions, and I hope that he will continue to. I'm sure that he will. And then the last thing, Mr. Demura, I'd just like to appeal to you, and maybe this has already been taken care of, but that the deadline for application on the Wando Dock vendors or operation be extended. I want, the reason for that is to ensure that all qualified persons have the best opportunity to take a diligent analysis of it, and so the citizens end up with the best operation that we possibly can. So please consider that. Thank you very much.
Pat Sullivan?
Good evening, Pat Sullivan, 1002 Plantation Court. And I too offer my congratulations to all of our new council members. And thank you for your willingness to run and now to take on this huge and vital task of continuing to make Mount Pleasant a great place to live. You all have a wonderful new world opening up to you, lots and lots to learn so that you can be our best council members that you can be, and we are absolutely counting on you to do that. I hope that you have already started boning up on your reading and learning and spending time with our outstanding staff. One of the first important issues you will most likely take up is the comprehensive plan. I wonder how many of you have really read it. Sure, it's long, but a large portion of it is backup information such as maps, charts, and study results. When it's completed and voted on by you all, it will be our town's guide for how we move forward. This plan was over a year in the making by a geographically dispersed group of approximately 35 citizens whose gender, age, and race reflected that of our town. Every working session was open to the public with a comment period, formally reviewed by the public at several open houses and commented on by many online surveys. And lastly, formally reviewed by our town planning commission. All of the very positive remarks are available for reviewing. The point I'm making here is that this plan was reviewed, scrubbed, and commented on by thousands. A hard thing to keep in mind is that you are representing a town of 84,000 residents, not just a few who have loud voices and monopolize social media. Thank you.
Kevin Cunane?
Kevin Cunane, 3032 River Vista Way. Congratulations to the new council members. The voters made some excellent choices. I'm hoping to see great things come out of this council. First, remember that you are a strong council, and the people on the dais, all the people on the dais have equal responsibility for the well-being of the town. Ceremonial positions, like our weak mayor, should have no bearing upon your decision-making as a council member. Second, use your talents, share them with the town. You all bring vast life experiences to the table. Please bring them to bear for all of the town. If a person with no cognizable life experience does not like it, use your experience and talents anyway. Great things can come of it. Third, protect what is dear to you. There have been far too many instances of family being dragged into town political squabbles. That's disgusting, and it's not what Mount Pleasant is about. Yet, It's gone on under a continuing office holder more than a couple of times. Resist that nonsense and stand strong against it, whether it happened in the past, it's ongoing, or if it goes on in the future. Good luck to the 7 people of goodwill up there, and Tom's not here tonight. So that would be 8, including my former council colleagues and new council members. Thank you for stepping up in this difficult climate. Your actions will drive this town to a better place. Not photo ops or tweets, but your actions and decisions driven by your exemplary character. God bless.
That's all I had, sir.
That concludes public comments. Item number 7 would be consent agenda items. There are no consent agenda items on the agenda for tonight. This moves us to item number 8, which is planning. And
Mayor?
Yes.
I move to approve items A1 through 5, which are all annexations, which the Planning Committee recommended approval of 4-0.
We have a motion on the table to approve item, and a second, to approve items, Section A, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, which are all annexations. We have a second, and all of these were voted on 4-0 by the Planning Committee. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor of the motion to approve those items, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. The motion passes. Items 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are approved. This brings us to item.
So it's first reading, ordinance numbers 19070, 19071, 19072, 19073, and 19074.
Thank you. This brings us to item number 6, please.
And I was going to do those first 5 items, but Ms. Cannon will take it from here.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, thank you. You actually already covered 5, which was part of, we had combined those 2. So the annexation and the zoning to area-wide business district for 453 West Coleman Boulevard. So just to get your bearings there, if you'll recall, it's right near Shem Creek and the town's Shem Creek Park. And it is a business, a lingerie business, so you can see it right there. And let me get to my comments here.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve, and we have a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the motion to approve item 6, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes.
Okay, moving along. 7 and 8 is to annex and zone AB area-wide business district, 8 parcels consisting of about 14.59 acres. And it's across from Oakland Plantation, and you can see it there between Church at Life Park and sort of the Mellow Mushroom area businesses.
Motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion to approve, and we have a second.
For items 7 and 8? Or just?
I'm sorry. What's the motion for item 7 or 7 and 8?
Item 7.
Item 7. The motion is for item 7. Is the second for item 7? Okay. We have a motion, a second. Is there any discussion?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And I'm going to make this brief. This came about because of some excellent work by someone who's gone, who was here earlier, John Dodds. The fact that this property is heirs property, and Mr. Dodds did just a fabulous job putting all this together. It is not an easy thing to do, to go back and back to bring heirs property to a better use, let's put it that way. And I just think we ought to commend Mr. Dodds for doing that. That's all.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion to approve item 7, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. The motion is approved.
It's first reading, ordinance number 19076.
Okay, this request comes with a request to zone AB area-wide business district.
Motion to approve item number 8.
Second.
We have a motion to approve item number 8 and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the motion to approve, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved.
First reading, ordinance number 19077.
All right, this is an ordinance to annex and approve 2 properties on Highway 17, and you can see them there in the aerial.
Move to
Motion
approve.
approved, yeah.
Anything else?
Second.
All right.
I was waiting.
We have a motion by Mrs. Whitley to approve and a second by Mrs. Landing
For item,
for item number
Number 9.
9. Thank you. Any discussion? I believe this is, if I'm looking right, this is the Askew's Body Shop property.
Yes.
Well
This
known.
is-
Everybody knows that property. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion to approve item 9, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion. Oh, I'm sorry. We have one no vote.
And Mayor, I abstain.
Okay. So we have one abstention. We have one no vote. The rest are aye, so the motion passes.
First reading ordinance number 19078.
And just for clarification, this is two separate properties. The front parcel is, the request is to zone AB area-wide business, and it used to be improved as a doggy daycare. The back property is requested to be AB2, area-wide business 2 district, and it consists of the AAA. And just for some clarification, the request includes, and it will come before the design review board later, but to redevelop that front lot, and they need a little bit of extra property. So the request will actually be to create a zoning line, and an extra 30 feet will be added into the front AB, and then if that zoning is approved, they will subdivide along that zoning line. So you'll have that extra 30 feet added to the front, that'll be zoned AB, and then the back portion would be AB2.
Move to approve.
Second.
And the item that you move to approve is?
Is item number 10.
Number 10, thank you. We have a motion to approve item number 10 in a second. Any further discussion? Yes.
I would like to say that I'm very excited about the business that is going to be coming to town in the front half of this parcel. As a mom with little ones, it is a drive-through grocery store, sort of old-fashioned milk and glass bottles, and you just pull up, and it's meant to replace your midweek grocery trip. It's a startup. The founders are here. Had a chance to talk with them after the meeting earlier this week, and I've already told like half a dozen moms about this. They're all very excited about the ability to drive in. I mean, Jake, your wife, she's going to be all over this. Sharon will be all over this. I think they've got a value prop. So you just pull in, you get your things, and you keep driving. So,
Thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion to approve item 10, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes.
Mayor, I abstain.
You abstain with one abstention. Thank you.
First reading ordinance number 19079.
Okay, and this last request I'm going to present is basically just a cleanup. As you'll recall, the town council adopted the new short-term rental program, and now that we know what that's going to look like and that ordinance has been adopted, we needed to go back and clean up the rest of the zoning code. So any references to a bed and breakfast is now going to be incorporated into the short-term rental. In our principal use table, that includes taking out bed and breakfast, putting in short-term rental, making that a conditional use, and then those conditions reference our new short-term rental ordinance. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. This is item 11, just to be clear. Mr. Chapman, your motion was for item 11?
Yes, sir.
Just to make sure? All right. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion to approve item 11, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain.
One abstention.
First reading ordinance number 19080.
This moves us to item number 12. Mr. Ulma.
Yes, Mayor, this is an ordinance change to Chapter 150, our building regulations, and it would make sure that our code makes all the proper references to the various building code requirements. These will all go into effect January 1st, and the codes adopted by reference you see here, building code, plumbing code, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
We have a motion to approve item 12 and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion to approve, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes.
First reading ordinance number 19081.
That concludes new business. We are now into section B, which is old business.
Yes, sir. First item, B1, relates to changes to the zoning code related to the Old Village Historic District.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve with an amendment. And the reason I would like to make an amendment is I've been working with the planning department, and I believe that
Mr. Mayor,
because...
point of order, I think
Yes.
the amendment has to come.
Right.
Oh, separate. Oh, I
Yeah.
apologize. So can I move to...
Right.
I'd like to make an amendment. And, no.
Make a move to approve
Move
the
to
item. and
approve
then
the
amend
item.
it. There you go.
I'd like to move to approve the item.
There we go.
Second her motion to approve.
Okay.
Can I hear more explanation?
Oh, sure.
Yes, we have a motion and we have a second. We're in discussion. Would you like to ask a question?
I can give you a quick rundown if that.
Okay.
The quick rundown will be excellent.
If that helps. Here on the slide, you see these amendments were generated by the Old Village Historic District Commission, as well as staff. There are a mix of minor changes and some major changes, and we point out for you under the major changes, two of those. One is that in anticipation of an historic district or other historic districts in town, rather than just have this refer to Old Village, sort of making it more generic. They would be responsible for Old Village, and in the future, if any different or new historic districts are created, we're set up to be able to handle that. Probably the biggest change is the one on the bottom of the list, the age threshold to determine an historic property. Currently, the ordinance hardwires that as buildings that were constructed before 1936. So we are not continuing to add to the available supply of potential historic structures. Most communities under the historic preservation programs use a rolling time period of 50 years. So we would be moving to that, which would then potentially allow for many additional structures within the Old Village at this point to be considered for historic designation.
And may we clarify, this only makes them eligible. It does not declare or make them historic, but it does make them eligible.
Correct.
And it only applies to the Old Village Historic
Currently.
District currently, but it
Yes.
opens the door for others.
In the future, and some of the recommendations in the draft comprehensive plan are to consider other historic districts. And so you wouldn't want the Old Village Historic District looking out after other parts of town. So it would just be an Historic Preservation Commission generically. But our only historic district at this point would still be the Old Village.
And who makes that determination?
Council.
They look at a list of properties and...
Yes. So ultimately, what would happen is staff and the commission would evaluate and look at properties and then bring forward recommendations to council, and those require public hearings. So you would have that opportunity to look at those at that time, as well as new historic districts in the future.
Okay, so we have the primary motion on the floor. I believe, parliamentarian, correct me if I'm wrong, you may now offer an amendment, and then we will vote on the amendment, and then we'll vote on the motion as amended.
All right, so the motion to amend, I would like to include a definition in the ordinance that adds land usage patterns as a potential item for historic designation. Currently, it is just about buildings that are older than 50 years, but there are certain communities within our footprint where the buildings are not what's significant. It's the land use patterns over the years. That's primarily our historic settlement communities. Their land use patterns are what is unique about their communities, and so the current definitions that focus on buildings wouldn't necessarily apply to these sort of historic communities that we are looking to preserve, or to help preserve. So I would like to add land use patterns.
All right, this would be
It's a motion.
A secondary motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
All right, we have a second. We're in discussion. You have the floor.
Yeah, I just had a question. Now these settlement communities, these are in the county?
They are, but I'm hoping that we can create a positive environment with the town, should they choose to annex in, that we would be able to potentially offer, and believe this is part of the comprehensive plan, because these communities are within our footprint, and I even believe some of the folks in unincorporated county were on our comp plan forum, because how these communities develop is incredibly important to our community, as we saw with the Boone Hall designation with the conservation easement, that is preserving 600 acres from development so that we don't have another Brickyard, another Park West. And I think that it's time, as we look at our comprehensive plan, to consider these historic communities. Now, they don't have to come in. There's nothing making them come in. This is just creating a positive environment in the town should they choose to annex in.
Yeah, I'd just like to ask our attorney, David, can we do this from the town, to be able to do this outside of the town limits, to declare something like this? That's what I'm just asking, because I'm not quite sure. I've never seen it, us asked to be able to do something outside of the town limits.
No, we're not doing anything else. We're not designating anything, Gary.
Well, I thought you were including them in.
No. It's a definition. It's just a definition in this thing. And it's not creating any new historic district. It's just creating a definition that is inclusive.
Right, and I guess the only thing is I turn to the planning director to see if he understands.
I understand. I'm not sure which provision would be affected. It would be a general provision, and that language could be added along those lines to the ordinance that you would be adopting this evening. So it's a site, structures, environment. There are several terms that define the characteristics of an historic area, and land use patterns or land development patterns are one that could be added to that.
Is that, isn't that land use covered under the zoning, under community conservation? It already says what the land uses are, so I'm unclear of what the purpose would be outside of that.
I think the intent of this would be, as you would look into the future, to consider creating new historic districts. It wouldn't just be buildings or houses that would be able to be qualified. You could also then broaden it to consider the development pattern in a particular area. There may be parts in the town that are already developed in that kind of fashion. So it's just broadening the definition of the kinds of places that qualify for historic district designations.
Mayor.
The zoning wouldn't, at this point, wouldn't address that.
Okay.
Ms. Whitley?
Yeah, so for example, I believe parts of Snowden are within the town limits. And not saying that they want to, or that that's a possibility on the table right now, but but the houses on there, the way that they've developed, none of those houses are 100 years old, like the old village, right? These are all newer homes. There's, modular homes, there's trailer homes. So what's been unique about the development of these communities is actually how the land use pattern has developed as parents have had children and then grandchildren, how they divide the lots to support that. And so all this is doing is including land use as a definition, because right now, Snowden wouldn't count as a potential historic district, despite having been here for hundreds of years, because their buildings are not significant under this current definition. So all I want to do is make land use patterns part of what's historic, so that should these communities want to annex into the town and want to be historic, that would be a possibility. That's all this does. Okay. It does not impose anything on anyone. It does not impact zoning at all.
If I may, my concern is this is final reading on that. I get where you're going with that. I would just like to explore it a little bit, just to make sure. I mean, like, who would we pattern it after? And I guess I'll ask you: is there a community that has done that has designated land use? Like, I get how you designate a structure. There are certain architectural elements and date and all of that. But you can determine that because you're looking at something that is frozen in time, like a building. Land use, who is here to tell us how that land was used 100 years ago, and do we go on anecdotal? Do we go on?
It would be a reflection, Mayor, of the existing, that pattern that was established then would still exist today. So it might not be an individual home or commercial building on a parcel. It could be the way that particular area is laid out. Many communities, counties probably more than cities and towns, have rural historic preservation districts. And part of what they deal with is the agricultural landscape or the pattern of development, and they're not even necessarily looking at structures. So you can create an historic district that way. Perhaps, I mean, we could look into that and bring that back through as an alternate way to get there and get you more information and just do it as a separate text amendment for the future.
Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
The county actually has an ordinance that has this designation and includes land use patterns. So currently, all the settlement communities could potentially apply for historic designation with the county, with the land use patterns. All I want to do is create an equivalent ordinance in our town so that if they want to come into our town, we give them the same offering that the county currently has. But I'm perfectly willing to send this to committee for December, so I'll withdraw my motion if Gary will withdraw his second, and we could work to approve this tonight as is, and happy to have planning take a deeper look. I know we've got 4 new members of council, so I'm perfectly happy to do that, so.
Okay, so
I'll
there's a withdrawal of the amendment and withdrawal of second. Okay, so we are back to the primary motion to approve item B1, which is final reading of the ordinance for historic designations. Is there any discussion on the primary motion? We prepared to vote? All in favor of the motion to approve, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
We have 1 no vote.
Final reading, ordinance number 19062.
All right, let me get my notes here. All right, this brings us to item 2, item B2.
Yes, Mayor, this is a rezoning request to change the zoning on this property at 1190 Shadow Drive from office professional to area-wide business 2. It's an existing automobile repair shop. It's been operating in this condition for decades. The initial zoning that was applied, it's in the overlay along the Chuck Dolly Boulevard, and it has an underlying zoning designation of this office professional. You see the property there designated with a star behind a piece of property that's designated for AB2. So this request would bring this property in line with the adjoining property and recognize all the different actions and activities that have already been occurring on the property. So as you see here, it doesn't operate as office professional. It really operates as an AB2 use. So this would put the zoning to fit what is going on that property. We believe it might have been just a mapping error years ago as property was zoned in this particular vicinity.
Do we have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I just want to ask them, if they come, if we approve this, and now that whole area there is AB2, what all could be put on that piece of property there?
AB2 would have a variety of commercial uses and activities. What AB2 typically allows are more the outdoor storage versus regular indoor commercial developments and those kind. Slightly more intense uses under AB2, but primarily outdoor. And as you see from the photos, this facility has a lot of outdoor activity. So the most appropriate or closely aligned zoning district for what's already there is AB2.
I mean, but what I'm saying is, what my concern is, if a developer were to come in there and purchase all 3 of those pieces of property, if we vote to allow this to be AB2 so that all 3 pieces put together, somebody could come in and develop that property as AB2, what is the difference? I guess what I'm concerned about is I see this happen where they come in and they join properties, and next thing you know, you got a hotel coming up. My concern is right now you couldn't have that because that property kind of splits them. But if you zone that AB2, it'll make those 3 parcels all AB2, which then...
What it does, Mr. Santos, the existing parcel in the middle is already here, is AB2. This request would add this. The front parcels along the roadway are still office professional.
Okay.
And then they're all in the overlay, the boulevard overlay, which allows even additional or other uses. So you have a composite of zoning that would regulate what happens on this property.
Okay, thank you.
And this is 0.83 acre. It's less than an acre. correct?
Yes.
Okay. I don't believe we have a motion at this point.
I'll make the motion, Mayor,
All right,
for discussion purposes.
Okay.
In particular. I know
motion
we-
to approve?
Yes, sir, motion approved, but I'm doing that to get it open for discussion. I know we've sort of been discussing it, but I want to hear if there was any information from the neighbors in this area. There's a pretty good buffer, it looks like, but was there any discussion during the Planning Commission meeting in particular from the neighborhood itself?
Hold on a second. We have a motion, we have a second. Now we're in discussion.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I
Thanks. That's all
thought
right.
she'd already said that. I apologize.
No, Mr. Chapman. This use has already been existing. You have a residential subdivision immediately adjacent. When the Planning Commission looked at it, it was recommended for approval 7-0, and the Planning Committee, when it came through them prior to last time, was recommended unanimously 3-0. We did not hear, I don't believe, from any adjoining neighbors. They understand that that use is there.
So I understand that the current use does not fit with office professional. However, office professional zoning is certainly most appropriate for a business area that buffers right up into a residential neighborhood. So I share the concern about future land use or sale or anything like that. And correct me if I'm wrong, but this business can continue to operate as a non-conforming business because it was here before the zoning code.
It can continue to operate. The owner was trying to get things in line to be able to make sure that if something happened, it's the nonconformity clause, damage or destruction. Now I suddenly can't do this business anymore. He was trying to cover that possibility.
And that clause is a town ordinance that specifies exactly what that clause is?
Yes.
And I would just say for council, I think that we should take a look at that ordinance to prevent having to rezone something that we're not comfortable rezoning just because of the nonconformity at the moment.
Other discussion? Yes, Ms. Willie.
I think that's a great suggestion, Jake. I think that's something that the planning committee should definitely take up, is because we could come up against this all the time where non-conforming properties want to rezone so that they can keep doing what they're doing. But like Gary said, we've done this before and you end up with a hotel there. So even though the planning commission recommended approval 7-0, planning committee recommended approval 3-0, I'm reconsidering where I stand on this based on all this that I've heard from you all. So thank you.
Mr. Ulma, if the current operators, if a hurricane or a fire damaged their business over 50% and they had to rebuild, what would they have to do? Would they have to do this at that point to get it rezoned so that they could rebuild and stay in business?
Yes, that would be one option at that time. Or if they did not change the zoning, then they would have to construct and build uses allowed under the OP zoning district that exists on the property today.
Yes.
2 points. So one is that we've heard a number of times in the past is that the process would take a long time. And when you've had a storm or something else destroy your livelihood, you're trying to rebuild as quickly as you can. So the idea here is to have it conforming so that they can do that. The second thing is you showed us a picture, and isn't it true since the front portion of this land, which is by far the largest, is half the size of this entire area, is OP anyway, is there even anywhere close to enough space if they wanted to do something like a hotel or something down the road? I mean, I know we're speculating into the future anyway, but we do have to consider things.
Well, you see a variety of uses.
Right.
And older buildings, commercial buildings and activities in that general vicinity. In order to do something of a size, probably, it would take what Mr. Santos suggested, an assemblage of property to be able to do it. You couldn't do it on this one particular parcel by itself.
And then wouldn't such a request at that time, at whatever the use is, they can build something, but not necessarily to any height they want. So certainly building some huge hotel was not going to happen without other
All the zoning provisions, the overlay provisions, the height requirements, all of that would come to play with any new development. And it would all be reviewed by Design Review Board.
And would that also include an impact assessment because it's not on a major thoroughfare?
Potentially, Mayor, depending
Depending on
on
the trip generation.
It'd be trips and square footage, so it's hard to speculate what might happen.
So in other words, if I may, if the chair may, what you're saying is that if we approved this, someone couldn't come along, write them a check, buy the property, and automatically build a hotel there. There are many hoops that it would have to go through. Is that correct?
If a hotel has an allowed use within an AB2, but whether they could do it on this property or assembling other parcels, it would take them some time to do that as well.
But they would have to
The front is OP.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's not zoned for a hotel.
It's not going to be a quick and easy. And you have to look at the overlay as well. I'm not sure if that provides that opportunity within the overlay.
This particular parcel is 0.83 acres.
Yes.
So it appears that the same parcel next to it is 0.83 acres. You could do a lot with 1.6 acres if you were able to assemble both of those. And those are both if we made both of those area-wide business, that certainly, you could do a lot with 1.6 acres that does not fit adjacent to a residential neighborhood. But again, I see the owner's concerns as far as if something happened to their property, they shouldn't be able to replace it. And again, I would urge planning committee, whoever that is, to take on that ordinance and see if that's even appropriate ordinance, how we deal with non-conforming properties.
The motion on B2 is to approve. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion to approve, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
No.
I think you're going to have to call the roll.
Bless you.
Mr. Chapman?
Aye.
Mr. Chapman votes yes. Ms. Corley?
Aye.
Ms. Corley votes yes. Ms. Hyatt?
No.
Ms. Hyatt votes no. Ms. Landing?
Aye.
Ms. Landing votes yes. Mr. O'Rourke is absent. Mr. Rambo?
No.
Mr. Rambo votes no. Mr. Santos?
No.
Mr. Santos votes no. Ms. Whitley?
No.
Ms. Whitley votes no. Mayor Haney?
Aye.
Mayor Haney votes yes.
I have a 4-4, so that's a tie, so the motion fails.
What happens with that now?
I move to
I'll defer to the attorney.
That motion fails, another motion can be made.
But if we are 4-4 and we just do this again, then it's going to be
gonna
4-4 again.
fail.
So can we, I move to defer this to next month when we have full council.
Yeah. Second.
Well, okay, that's your motion is to defer.
My motion is to defer till next month.
Second.
And I have a second.
We have a motion to defer, and we have a second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion to defer, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So item B2 is deferred. Bear with me, please. Brings us to item B3. This is the Taco Bell sign.
Yes, sir. This is a proposal to amend the existing Oakland Plantation PD as it deals with signs. Here is the upper portion of the PD. It actually goes further south on Highway 17, but that's the Lowe's, and you see the general location here. So if you're familiar with the Lowe's Home Improvement and the existing location of the Taco Bell at the upper northern end, within the PD, you see on this side of 17 a whole series of signs that are allowed under the existing regulations. Signs 9 and 10 are the existing ones that were in the county at the time. Those are being asked just to be brought into the PD and meet those requirements. It is further the sign at the uppermost, number 11, where they would be asking to add an additional sign, which would it would be on the Lowe's property. Ultimately, it would say, presumably, Lowe's and Taco Bell on it in order for it to be located there. These are examples of some of the other signage that's there.
Motion
I
to
make a motion
approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve, and we have a second. Let me, during discussion, let me ask you to continue, because if it came to me, I would ask for it anyway. So we're going to go ahead and do this part in discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. So the Each out parcel can have 35 square foot of signage. As mentioned, where the Taco Bell is situated, you have designated wetlands along the front, so between the building and the highway, right there. So they have no ability to put that size sign in that location. So what they were doing was moving forward to be able to utilize one of the sign types that's already in the PD and be able to add an 150 square foot monument sign, which is one of the sizes already allowed, which would give them that ability to display the Taco Bell advertising as well as whatever Lowe's would put on there. So again, it's up at sign number 11, or actually, I think it would be 12, that would be adding a sign to that size. And I can go back.
Yes.
I'm sure several of us probably met with the folks that are petitioning for this, the owners of Taco Bell. So just to clarify a couple quick things. One, the sign that's currently there, which is the big Lowe's sign, simply says Taco Bell in black and white lettering. Doesn't even look like a Taco Bell. It's almost hard to see it. And as they pointed out, if you see all the pictures, which I don't know if they're here in this example, but when you're coming northbound, you can't even see it at all until you're right up on the turn. And by then, if you're going 45 miles an hour, it's pretty hard to slow down and turn into the Taco Bell because it's set way back. And then on the other side, coming out, the trees completely block the Lowe's /Taco Bell sign, so you can't see it at all until you're past it. So basically, they're just not getting any attraction at all. It's all from people that already know they're there. The other thing is, I asked the question, I said, well, where's your regular Taco Bell with the bell and all? And normally what they would have done is have the smaller size monument that would have the Taco Bell. But because they have to use the Lowe's land because of their wetlands in front of theirs, Lowe's wants to have more signage. So Lowe's said, that's fine, we can do that, but you're going to have to split it. And that's why they have to have the bigger, taller sign. So half would be the Taco Bell, presumably on the top this time, and then Lowe's on the bottom. I don't know that part, but I'm guessing. And that's the only reason they need. The part about the two additional ones that are non-conforming has nothing to do with Taco Bell. They're kind of bringing that up out of the goodness of their heart because apparently this is the last time they can come for any kind of changes. And so they figured they'd do it all at once. So they're not asking for three things, really. Taco Bell's asking for their sign, but the other is in order to bring those into conformance.
If they were...
Wait, just think.
Oh, sorry.
Anyone else? Yep. Please ask to be recognized first.
How do you do that?
Want the floor?
Can I be recognized?
Yes, thank you.
If this parcel was its own parcel with a standard like AB zoning, something like that along a major highway, I'm not part of a planned development, what would be its signage rules and guidelines?
It would be a 35 square foot. Yes, under town 5B, a freestanding sign, 35 square feet in area, 8 feet tall for each out parcel.
And what is the request?
Generally, the request is for the 150 square foot monument sign, which is one of the sign types already in the PD. So 35 for an individual freestanding sign.
Can we bring up the applicant? Is that?
Yeah, you can ask the applicant questions if you like, yes.
So when you guys were talking, y'all were talking about how, since it wasn't included in the PD, that particular sign, and if it was, a parcel in and of itself, it would have signage rights. But the signage that being requested is a lot larger than the signage rights that it would typically get.
Right, so.
And can you just describe the need again for me?
Right, so basically, you have Lowe's with the big parking lot, and then at the end of the parking lot, you have Taco Bell. And it's its own, I think it's like 1.001 acres, whatever.
Yeah.
So it has the Taco Bell. Well, right in front of it, there's about 60 to 70 feet of wetlands, and those wetlands have a legal restrictive covenants on them that is owned technically by the Army Corps of Engineers, which there's provisions like you can allow, there's a boardwalk is one of the accepted, but signage is not one of the approved uses in that wetland. So when we were trying to figure out how we were gonna get signage for this site, our only option was to move off our site, which moves us to Lowe's. Yes, typically we would ask for the monument sign that we would have right if we weren't in the PUD. But when we went to Lowe's, they're saying, yeah, sure, y'all can have signage on our site, but whatever size y'all have, we need as well. So that's why, 35 feet, if you put, you drive by, if you see Chick-fil-A right there, it's not a very big sign. So in order to fit 2 businesses on that, you may as well not even do it. So we basically, the next size up from the PUD in 2011, when this original sign amendment was done, or the signage package was done, was the next size up was the 150. Does that make sense? So the approved signs in the PUD as it currently exists are, I believe it's 35, 150, and then 200. So when we met with staff, they recommended that, or they thought it was a good idea that we would stick with one of the existing signs that was previously approved with the PUD, which obviously the smaller one doesn't work, so we went the next size up, which is 150.
Thank you.
Where did Ms. Whitley walk out? I was going to ask for clarification. What's printed here for this, and we have a motion to approve, says recommended approval of only the portion of the request dealing with the 2 non-conforming signs. So would the motion, that's what the motion would be?
That's what was at the first reading.
That's what it was for first reading. And I think if I'm correct in understanding that it's the Taco Bell portion that needs to be clarified and specifically included. And we have to ask.
I don't know if Gary was, my motion was going to be to add that we'd have the 2 existing legal non-conforming signs become conforming and add the 150 square foot monument sign.
So you would be amending the motion, the approval done at the last meeting.
Right.
Because that extracted the larger sign.
So we need a amendment, proposed
You
amendment.
need to state that amendment or proposed amendment as a motion. It would need to be seconded and a vote on the amendment.
Okay, I make a motion that we make an amendment to the existing motion, that we add the 150 square foot monument sign, so the Taco Bell will also have signage available on their, on their property, in the PUD.
Second.
Okay, so we have the motion and we have a second. This is the amendment. We're in discussion. All right, I have a question to Mr. Olma. I remember voting on this, one of the first things I voted on as a council member, I believe we voted on the Lowe's thing in 2016, would that be right? Late, maybe December of 15, or January of 16. I don't remember an out parcel where the Taco Bell is now. So can someone answer, was this on the planning commission, Mr.?
Yes, sir. I didn't want to bring that up since I'm new, but Mayor, you're bringing up something exactly what my thought process was. I was on the planning commission. I think I was actually chairman then. And I was very vocal about 2 things. One was the traffic flow in and out, which has been modified for Lowe's, I presume by BOZA, since I left. And second, the fact that they wanted to reduce parking. They didn't think they needed as much parking as we were going to require of them. Now, and obviously that's where you get the out parcel.
Right. So I have a history with this, and I guess, Mr. Santos, you and I were on council at that time, and I don't remember how you voted. I remember that I didn't like the fact that they got some allowances for the parking just for the Lowe's, and now we have an out parcel that is asking us to amend a plan development. If I were one of the competitors down the way, I might come back and say, well, why don't you amend it for me as well? So I can't support that amendment for that reason. Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to speak with my economic development and business development hat on, and this is not a new business that's trying to come to town. This is a business that's already, as they pointed out, spent a lot of money on impact fees. They've followed everything that they were supposed to do. From what I understand, it's taken close to 2 years to get to this point, and all they want is a sign so people know they're there. I don't even see how we can think that it's reasonable to say, no, we're happy you paid all that money, we're happy you brought this business, we're happy you employ our residents, we're happy you feed our residents, but we won't give you a sign for something that it's Lowe's property, they're willing to do this. And one of the things that Taco Bell is doing in asking us this is having this classification of 2 non-conforming signs, as I already said, that have nothing to do with their business. So the real ask here is for the sign that's the new sign. It just so happens that because of the, I think, confusion in this way this was presented or something, that what we're looking at voting on here, if we don't do the amendment, is something that leaves them out in the cold. They would not have a sign to send business their way. I don't know why in the world we would not want them to be able to do that.
Yes, sir.
So, and that's why I asked that question, because I initially interpreted, and I remember talking about this, anyway, I remember it coming up at the old meeting, and I initially as well interpreted it as a 150 square foot Taco Bell sign, but once it's described, and I'm remembering the pictures now as far as, you know, just another smaller Lowe's sign with a Taco Bell sign, I mean, ideally it would have a sign just like Chick-fil-A or McDonald's does, you know, right there, but since that's not a possibility, that's why I'm in support of this.
Is there anything preventing the other fast food restaurants that are in shops of Oakland that are part of this planned development that are living by the current rules from coming back and asking us to make further exemptions and exceptions?
No, Mayor. Someone could make a request for any zoning text or map amendment in the future. And I believe your history is correct, that originally that upper end was expected to only be one development, and then over time it is now 2. So they didn't think of putting another sign and designating one in this location until this point in time.
Right, and so that planned development existed when the others made their investment in this planned development. And they opened up, and those were the rules, and they also played by the rules. And I think we've confirmed that when this Lowe's was approved, there was no out parcel that was approved. So we amended that and then put a fast food where there was none that was envisioned for this planned development anyway. And now we're going to change and do the sign as well. So we've already given them exemptions for parking. We've already given them exemptions for an out parcel. And now we're going to give them another exemption for a sign. And I would just have to ask, what's the purpose of doing a planned development or a planned development agreement if every time somebody comes along, we change the rules, and everybody knew what the rules were when this was established? So that's my reason for my opposition. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I sat in a meeting and we had very clear pictures of what this business is dealing with. Taco Bell was not involved in whether the Lowe's property has had the control in this situation, has asked for things. When Taco Bell asked Lowe's, since we can't put a sign on the part that is our land, can we put it on your land? The answer was only if you will include ours. Otherwise, what they'd be asking for would be the smaller sign, just like McDonald's and just like Chick-fil-A has. So again, I don't understand why we would want to punish Taco Bell here. What they're asking for, what I was told is, because you asked the question, Mr. Mayor, about can someone else come back later? What I heard was no one else can come back later because this is the last time this property is going to be allowed to have any signage changes, and that's why they're taking those 2 pieces and asking them to become conforming. So this would be a one fell swoop. That's what they said in this meeting, and that's why supposedly those 2 pieces are included in it, because this is the last time they're doing anything on signage.
I call for the question.
That's possible if no one else desires to speak. Yes, sir, Mr. Santos.
I remember when they first came up with the Lowe's idea as well, and we always knew that there was going to be something being built down there because of the parking lot was so big. They claimed they didn't need that, but I mean, I always knew something was going to come up there anyhow, so to me, it's not a surprise that they put a Taco Bell there. I agree that they need a sign. I mean, they've invested a lot of money into that, and I just think they ought to have a sign up in front where they can advertise their development.
Any other comments? All right, so this is, we'll take the vote on the amendment, which is to add the 150 square foot monument sign, and then after that vote, then we will vote on the motion to approve item B3. So all in favor of the amendment to this motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? No.
Nay.
Nay.
Two noes.
Who was the other no?
Me. So 2 noes? Okay. So the motion for the amendment passes. So now we are on the motion to approve item B3. Hang on just a second. Item B3, the Oakland Plantation Plan Development. And is there any further discussion now that the amendment has passed? All right. All in favor of the motion to approve, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I abstain for the full motion.
Okay. So I vote yes. So the motion is approved. We have 8 people here, 6. Yep.
It's final reading, ordinance number 19064.
Item B4, please.
This is a request to amend the Central Mount Pleasant Planned Development District, and it would incorporate additional property into the PD for purposes of expanding the use designation for the school and allow the school system the opportunity to add that piece of property to the site. It's the one designated with an X. You're at the corner of Hill Road and Rifle Range at Whitesides Elementary. And their purpose, this one is, Rifle Range runs north-south, or generally north-south. In that location, this is the property that they would be adding to the existing school site, which would allow them to redesign the school bus drop-off circulation system there. As you can see, it gets extended to pull more folks onto the site rather than having them out on Rifle Range Road or Hale Road next door. There were concerns by neighbors in the subdivision next door about potential access to the school from the Hale Road side, which would be Hale Road here. And the site has been designed, and the PD amendment does not allow vehicular access from the Hale Road side into the school site from that direction. It does provide for pedestrian access, and I believe you see here, there's a sidewalk connection that comes in, as well as golf cart, sort of a drop-off spot there for folks in the neighborhood to be able to drop children off at that location, but it does not allow for vehicular connection to that.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion to approve, and we have a second. We're in discussion, and for clarification's sake, where you see there it says the Planning Commission recommended denial 6-2 and the committee recommended approval unanimously. I believe some issues were addressed between the two processes, between the two votes, and the neighbors came to be comfortable with it. And Ms. Whitley, I guess you were there at the Planning Committee. At some point, I remember the neighbors saying that they were now comfortable with this.
Yes, there was some concern. They wanted to make it clear that there would be no additional curb cut to allow cars to come in. There will be a golf cart sort of zone place for golf carts to come in and drop off kids on Hale Road, but there will not be an additional curb cut to let cars come in on Hale Road. So the goal of all of this is to just reduce traffic, to to extend that car line so that cars aren't sitting on the road.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. Yes, sir, Mr. Chapman.
Mayor, at your last meeting, Eddie Twilley, representing the neighborhood, was here with the school personnel and the designer and confirmed that they accepted the new design and were glad to have it.
Right. And just to check, there's no one here from the public to speak against this tonight. Is that correct? Okay. So we have a motion to approve. This is item B4. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, and this is something I harped on when the whole Midtown came to the Planning Commission, was to put a traffic signal on Rifle Range Road at the intersection with the school and Midtown. That Midtown's been approved for quite some time. It was part of the motion. The developers accepted it, and I don't need to know the answer now, but now that I'm on council, I'd sure like to know where that signal is, and if it's not currently in the process of being installed, how we go about getting it installed. I know a lot of the things that have to happen, and I want to know if the developer still has it in their budget, and second, if they're doing the necessary due diligence to get that signal done, because that school deserves a traffic signal at their main entrance. And Midtown continues to develop and continues to develop with more traffic. And the longer we wait, the more opportunity is for some child to get hit or some parent driving their kid back and forth, coming in and out of that without a traffic signal to get hit.
Thank you. Yes, sir, Mr. Santos.
I agree, 100%. That road is already so congested, it's crazy. So, we need to get in touch with them and tell them they need to step up with that. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. Prepared to vote? All in favor of the motion to approve item B4, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Ordinance number 19065.
Item B5, Mr. Omer.
Yes, Mayor, B5 and B6 are similar in nature. They're amendments to the zoning code that deal with the height of accessory structures, number one. And as staff has explained, our ordinance allows certain structures, facilities, additions to structures to exceed the height limit, but is very explicit. If you see the amended language here, it can only be any one of those that happens to be listed.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve, and we have a second. We're in discussion. Any discussion? May I ask, is the motion for only item B5, or is it B5 and B6?
B5.
B5, okay.
I understand, yeah.
Any discussion? All in favor of the motion to approve B5, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Final reading, ordinance number 19066.
B6, please.
This is another ordinance amendment, and it deals with encroachment of accessory structures into setbacks. This, too, is explicitly spelled out in the ordinance with only certain uses that either may protrude into the setback or be placed into the setback. And for instance, we give you an example here. On the left, an HVAC unit under the current definition is allowed, but the generator, individual generator, the same size in the right photo would not be allowed the way the ordinance is written today. So the amendment would make it broader, and if it's something that is similar or including but not limited to these kinds of uses, staff would have the ability to make an interpretation and say, you are allowed, it is okay under our ordinance to be able to place such structures in this, or accessory uses in the setback.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Move for approval, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Move for approval.
Move for approval. Yes, sir.
Second.
And a second. Any discussion?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
What's the difference between those two pictures?
One's a HVAC.
That's our point exactly. So a generator is not listed in the ordinance?
I'm good, sorry.
Anything else? All in favor of the motion to approve item B6, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Final reading, ordinance number 19067.
Last one, item B7.
This is a rezoning request for a piece of property on Shermer Avenue, which would take the zoning from its current neighborhood commercial zoning to R1, residential low density. Here's the location of the property on Shermer behind the Sea Island Shopping Center. The property has current zoning today, but it's in the overlay, which it has commercial zoning today, but it's in the overlay which allows it, you see here in gray, to be able to have residential uses on neighborhood commercially zoned property in this location. The applicant, the owner, actually has design approval to build 4 townhome units on this property. Instead would prefer to build 2 single-family detached. So the purpose of this request would allow them to take the commercial zoning designation away. You can't do it anymore under our amended ordinance. You can't have the residential, single-family residential under the overlay today. So they want to sort of go backwards and have that ability to have 2 single-family detached.
And before we get anything, so a motion to approve would be going from potentially 4 residential units to only 2.
Yes, sir.
Do we have a motion?
Move for approval.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, sir. What was the issue with the planning commission recommending the denial 5-2? I mean, that's a pretty substantial vote.
Mr. Chapman, there was a concern of it in that location with commercial uses and other activities going there, and the idea that under the boulevard overlay, you would want to have more intense and other uses. Was it a good spot to put single-family residential in that location? So it was kind of a, as a use, maybe that's okay, but in this location, if we want to see other things occur in this general vicinity, maybe it's not a good idea. So that's where the debate was.
Yeah, but we just, not we, the planning commission within the last couple of years just approved pretty good size townhouse project in there.
Yes, there is residential across the street. so-
Exactly. And that across the street is closer to the shopping center than this parcel. Okay, thank you.
And just for note, I remember this discussion coming up before, and we were talking about, not rezoning commercial to residential. This is less than 2/10 of an acre, and it's moving in the right direction away from what would be allowed if it remained with a commercial zoning. So there again, this is one of those nuances, and I intend to support this because what we get is better than what we might get if we don't act.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
So under a typical, the current zoning is neighborhood commercial. So under typical land use on neighborhood commercial, it does not allow townhouses, but townhouses are allowed
Or
because of the overlay.
Correct. So the townhouses were allowed, so that's what moved forward.
Because of the overlay.
Because of the overlay. And then the overlay was changed to remove single-family detached from the overlay as an allowed use there. So this person doesn't have that ability, it has to build the townhomes, but would prefer to do the single-family residential under the amended overlay.
Okay. And I would again charge planning commission with looking at these overlays and getting it started, because, I mean, ideally, we wouldn't be rezoning commercial to residential at all. In this case, obviously, I'll vote for it because it makes a lot of sense, but I'll leave it at that.
Agreed. And things are complicated when we have overlay districts, so that's why. All right, are we prepared to vote? All in favor of the motion to approve item B7, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Final reading, ordinance number 19069.
That concludes the planning. Thank you, Mr. Olma.
Thank you, Mayor.
You win the award for the longest performance
Oh,
of the
I
evening.
appreciate that.
All right.
Do I get a football?
Yes, not as big as the trophies that were handed out earlier. Item 9, committee action items. Item A is accommodations tax advisory committee funding recommendations.
Mr. Mayor, I'm standing in for Mr. O'Rourke, who, Councilman O'Rourke could not be here this evening, and he was the one in charge of this committee. So the committee met to make recommendations for 12 funding requests for which the committee received applications. The current balance available is $150,000. Council has received a summary of the requests and the Accommodations Tax Advisory Committee's recommendation for funding 11 requests totaling $137,000. If council accepts the committee's recommendations, this will leave a $13,000 balance. As such, I move that the council approve the funding recommendations totaling $137,000 for the following items. I don't know that you want me to read all those, so we'll just refer to that. If you would like me to read them, I can. And so total $137,000.
Second the motion.
All right, so we have the motion that well, it's actually from committee, and it's quite detailed, but everybody listened to it, so you know what we would be voting on. We're in discussion. Are there any questions? Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to ask, I wasn't available to be at the ATAC committee meeting. Was there a request made by the town regarding the Art on the Half Shell project for more oysters? No, there was not.
All right.
Oh, thank you.
We'll ask them.
Good evening. So these projects actually come out of a line in our funding source reserved for projects. The town projects are actually set aside from the same funding source, so we already have the money allocated for those.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, all in favor of the motion to approve the recommendations of the ATAX committee, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Abstain.
Oh, we have an abstention, okay. Motion passes 7-0. Next, Education Committee.
The committee received an update from Charleston County School District regarding the status of potential changes being considered regarding partial and magnet schools. The committee recommends approval to draft a letter to the Charleston County Board of Trustees to oppose changes to the partial and magnet programs and to delay any upcoming votes on such matters until more information is available. I put that in the form of a motion.
Second.
Have a motion and we have a second. We have a member of the District 2 Constituent School Board who has been unified, right? It was unanimous in opposing these changes. This thing is fluid from the time we got to the meeting last Wednesday night, Jake, to from the start of the meeting to the time the meeting ended, what they were proposing had changed, and it changes daily.
Yes.
But in general, what we're being asked to do is write a letter asking them not to make changes to the partial magnet programs at all. And what I've asked is for them to guide us with exactly what they need us to say. And just for the record and for the public, we have no authority over this. We're only doing this because it affects our citizens. It affects our traffic flow. It affects a lot of things. We have no authority. This is a recommendation. So, yes, ma'am.
So just to give some history for the public who may not be familiar with what's happening, this first came before the Education Committee in October, and the CCSD presented on it, and they actually asked us to delay and not issue a letter at that time because they said it was fluid and it was changing. They came back again in November, and I said, all right, what's the update? And they said, our update is we have no update, it's fluid and it's changing. But it was clear that they were going to come to a vote on this, so at this point we said, well, you know, we're not going to delay on issuing a letter. The state delegation has issued a letter against this. The D2 board has issued a letter against this, and I think it is definitely time for our town council, despite having no authority over this, to at least state, you know, there's so many factors that are going into this, and they have stated currently that they're going to not change the partial magnet SIES and leave that as is. But again, it's still fluid, and they could still conceivably vote on it on December 16th. So I still think it is very important for our council to issue a letter, you know, sort of opposing these changes until some greater study can be done, or I mean, indefinitely, but also until greater study can be done of the impacts, because we've already been through some very serious rezonings in the past few years, and to trigger a cascade of rezonings again would be very, very disruptive to the education of our children.
Okay, and for the mechanics of this, what we would do is we would have a draft, and we would send that out. And yes, ma'am. Would you come to the podium? Pamela, if you'd give us your name and position, please.
Pamela Juwan Goldman, and I am on the D2 Constituent School Board. I did want to let Ms. Whitley know that I did send a statement, a guiding statement to her today.
Thank you. Okay. I'll pass it on to full council.
Great. And I also just wanted to add that while it was moved yesterday that they would bring to vote next month, actually December 16th, to keep the partial magnet programs in place at 3 of our schools. They also did approve a recommendation to evaluate additional staff in place at partial magnet schools and to determine if continued funding of the positions are warranted for 21-22. So everything is still fluid as far as we're concerned. We would like to have a letter just for historical reference.
Okay. Is everybody on council comfortable with that? Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Mr. Chapman.
Mr. Mayor, normally, normally. I would not be in favor of sending a letter from one elected body to another elected body, because they're elected just like us, telling them what to do. But it sounds like from Ms. Whitley, what she said, we did invite them to appear before our committees. How many times?
It's been twice so far. Well, they come quarterly to the Education Committee and talk to us, but when there are specific issues, like we had them speak on the busing issues that were happening, it's a very sort of informative, it's a very good working relationship with the school district. And in fact, this is the first time that something has come from them to us where we've been opposed to what they're doing, or at least I'm personally opposed, and I hope that the rest of council will join with me in
But we
opposing it.
did invite them
Yes.
to come and present. So we have knowledge presented by them suggesting what they thought they might do, but not being able to put anything concrete down when they came. I think we can do better than that. So in this case, I'm going to support the motion.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor of the motion from the Education Committee that we issue a letter opposing these changes to our schools, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. This brings us to item C, Planning Committee. This is a discussion and approval of possible reduction of existing 80-foot building heights, and as you can see, the rest of the things there. Was there a discussion, perhaps we send this to committee to be gone over?
So Planning Committee, I sit on that committee, and we recommended sending this to full council right away because time is of the essence here. There is a empty parcel that is open for sale currently that in an 80-foot zone. And so this is just a preliminary step to reduce the 80-foot height limits to 65 feet entirely. So basically throughout town, we would drop heights to 65 feet in all 80-foot zones. But ultimately, what we have been discussing in Planning Committee is moving away from feet requirements and moving to story requirements, where we could have more diversity of architecture. Instead of these big box buildings that are built to the height limit, we could have pitched roofs, we could have more low country architecture. So I think that is the ultimate goal of the Planning Committee, is to put together a recommendation of that nature to full council, but in the meantime, in an interim step, to drop these heights to 65 feet in the meantime, so that we are not creating a situation where people are rushing to the planning office to file their 80-foot big box buildings in the town. So this is just a preliminary step that the Planning Committee is asking full council to approve while we go back to the table with the comp plan and come up with a more long-lasting recommendation to full council.
Okay, and let me add, one of the things that has been pointed out to me is that this would be the building height map itself, that the comp plan itself refers to and defers to the building height map, but they are two separate items. So we can do one independently of the other,
Yes.
correct?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay, and then my other
This
question.
is contained in the zoning code.
Right.
And for a little bit of clarification, this is that general building height map. So it shows you various height limits and allowances beyond residential areas. What we focused on, or what the Planning Committee focused on, really was that corridor along Johnny Dodds Boulevard. And you see here in purple, at the bridge end, 80-foot heights, and at the hospital end, 80-foot heights with 55 in the middle. Staff suggested maybe that some of those areas that were 80 be reduced to 65, and the committee the other day recommended that other than right up at the hospital, they remain 80 there, and all of the former 80-foot heights be reduced to that 65.
Okay.
This will entail, if council chooses to move forward, the entire process of us drafting the changes and taking that to Planning Commission, public hearing, before you would effectuate that change.
Let me defer to Mr. Peglin.
Just for clarity, I think you just said that what magic words we're looking for is that any vote tonight does not present a change. It has to go through the process, the legislative process, as I understand, as Ms. Whitley said, this is an attempt to gauge council's interest in going through that process before it is done.
Yes.
And in that process, there could also be areas that we look at where we don't want even 65-foot buildings, because we have areas where we have 55 and other things like that. So this does not mean that the end product will be 65 feet everywhere, all buildings, as if every parcel is equal. Yes, sir, Mr. Santos.
Yeah, Mayor, I think you took the words out of my mouth. I'd like to see the 65 down to 55. I know she had spoke about that earlier, but I think 65 is just a little too big myself. But if you're going to send it back to talk about it, I think we need to have a discussion. But we did it on Coleman Boulevard. We went from 75 down to 55, and so I don't know why we couldn't do it over on Johnny Dodds.
So tonight, we're not enacting anything. So basically, what we're doing is sending this to start the process, and whether it's 65 or 55, that will come out of that process. Is that right, Mr. Bagley? Yes, sir. So a vote on this tonight does not approve even 65. It only starts the process. Is everybody clear? Any questions?
I have a
Yes,
question
sir.
about that process. So, it's my understanding, so this is just kind of a charge to staff to start working on an ordinance, but we're charging them to work on an ordinance that says 65 feet, and I don't know that that's palatable with a lot of us. Would it not be better to send it back to Planning Committee so we can refine it a little bit more and give staff more of a charge to then take it through the process? I understand the urge to rush, but I'd rather get it right.
Mr. Pagliarini will describe the process.
Sure, I don't think staff's going to prepare an ordinance. It's going to go through committee as part of the process anyway, so we may be talking about the same thing. We are not going to prepare an ordinance that says 65 feet until committee tells us to. Actually, I'd have to go through Planning Commission first, then committee. So there is the entire process, and we won't be preparing an ordinance until we're specific on what to do. But if you would like it to go to committee first, prior to Planning Commission, we can do that as well, and the commission can then guide us down the path.
This change has been discussed at Planning Committee for 4 or
Months.
5, 6 meetings.
Yeah, and Chairman Bustos was very much in support. It was this kind of one of his last things that he did sitting on this committee was we moved to bring this to full council. And I think that the goal was to actually drop the heights to 65 feet now. And then take, you know what I mean? Just because right now there's that parcel that's available. So if we drop the heights, if we don't drop the heights at all, there's possibilities of parcels being sold with 80 feet advertised, buildings filed for 80 feet. I think the thought of dropping to 65 feet, at least in certain zones, or at least in these zones for right now, was that there are buildings that are 80 feet, those little X's there, those are 80-foot buildings. And if you were to have 55-foot buildings with those 80 feet, buildings, that would look very unusual, but dropping to 65 feet. I mean, I had recommended a 65-foot drop to 55, drop to 45, even down on the far right over there next to Ms. Hyatt's neighborhood, because that seemed to me to be crazy that there would be 80-foot buildings right by those things. So there are tweaks that need to be done, but I think, and I guess maybe this is a Mr. Pagliarini question or Mr. DeMora question, is does it make sense can we move quickly enough on this in planning to prevent some of these things from happening? Or, do we, what's the process, I guess? Because I was under the impression when we were at committee that we could send this to council right now and vote on dropping to 65 feet tonight. And is that not the case?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
It was always the intent of committee to gauge the temperature of council before going through the process to drop the heights.
Okay.
That has its own process. It takes months to enact ordinances. And because this affects the zoning code, it must go through the Planning Commission. So this is going to take several months. Remember, properties get bought and sold, but not until they have an approved plan. There's a vesting period of which vests them into a certain height.
Okay.
And so transactions may occur tomorrow, but that doesn't vest the property.
So, Mr. DeMora, what would you recommend this next step that we take be to move this forward? We need a motion to send this back to committee?
Send it back, in my opinion, it should go back to Planning Committee to refine the heights, and then when it gets better structured, to send it on to the Planning Commission for review.
I put that in the form of a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second, and this will go to the committee so that, right, to the planning committee, and I'll be quiet. Any discussion? Yes, sir.
Mayor, I know you said they're two separate issues, the comp plan and then the listing of heights. I really think something like this drastic, also needs to be included in the comp plan as part of the plan rather than a separate listing. So whatever we do, I would really encourage us to include whatever comes out of that in the comp plan as a part of the comp plan, not as a separate item.
All right, but the motion before us is, regardless, is that this goes to the planning committee, all right? All right, are we prepared to vote? All in favor of the motion to send this discussion to the planning committee, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. This moves us to item D, which, D1, approval to create a fund for the purpose of collecting donations for the construction of a cultural arts center.
May I, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So this is an item that came out of committee, and I've been working with the Culture, Arts, and Pride Commission in the town, and they have some great ideas about how to create a cultural arts center in the town and how to fundraise for that through public-private partnership with the town. So the idea is, and I didn't know this until recently, so thank you, Marcy, for enlightening me, but if you want to write a check to the town right now, it is tax deductible. So as you plan your end-of-year giving, please consider writing a check to the town because it's tax deductible. So all this does is create a fund where we can now go to the public and say, we're going to try to build a theater, and $500 gets your name on the back of a seat. $10,000 gets a rehearsal space. $50,000 sponsors the artist in residence for the town of Mount Pleasant. Then we rotate between the disciplines. So all it does is it enables Culture, Arts, and Pride Commission to go back to the stakeholders and use the art study that this council or this previous council approved to do a needs assessment of our town and sort of an assessment of the facilities in our town. And what that study showed is that there is a need, but there's no funding. And I know Ms. Landing has done work to get a children's museum, was it built in
Greensboro.
Greensboro, where it was public-private partnership. And so I think there's much opportunity through the network of our council, through the Culture, Arts, and Pride Committee, to do the fundraising necessary and then find a place in town to have our own cultural arts center to add to the offerings of our recreation department. So no, you can do it. Gary.
Before you make a motion, may I interrupt just for a second? Okay. Having spent a decade as a CEO of some nonprofits, handling charitable contributions is a financial specialty in an industry in its own, a profession in its own. And I understand and applaud the intent of this, but there's a whole lot more about disclosure, accounting, auditing, a board of governors that would oversee it. Just giving money to the town, there just needs to be a lot more developed here, which I'm certainly open to, but just to vote tonight to create a fund for the purpose of collecting donations, that doesn't cover a lot of details involved with the charitable giving profession.
May I ask Marcy a question?
Sure.
So as far as I understood, there was no need to create a board or create a nonprofit or anything like that. My understanding was it was literally just an account created within the town that it could collect these funds that then would be earmarked for a cultural arts center. Is that correct?
So we can certainly establish a fund, but there will be a lot of details that would have to go into it. If it doesn't go through, what happens to the money? There are pieces and parts that we would bring forward back to Finance Committee to fully do this, but the mayor's correct. There are different pieces because we're going to have to account for it properly, and so we're going to have to make sure all those are in line. But any donation coming to the town, it's when you suddenly identify it for a project. And if it comes to the town for a project that we don't end up building, then is it still tax deductible? All of those pieces. So we have to be very cautious. We certainly can establish it, but we have generally accepted accounting principles that we'll have to follow.
Well, may I move then to send this to the Finance Committee for further discussion?
That'd be great.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, I have a motion to send that to the Finance Committee and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. I believe item 2, there will be a motion to,
Defer. We'll move to defer that because Councilman O'Rourke is not here, and he's asked that we defer this item until he can be present, and I agree with that.
best to have a motion. Motion to defer it?
Motion to defer.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion to defer item D2, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item 10, council new business, A1. I put that on there, consideration to establish and authorize the Flooding Resilience Committee of Council. This came out of my attendance at the final presentation of the Dutch dialogues to the city of Charleston. And not that the Dutch told us to do this, but the people from Louisiana, where they're spending $50 billion to deal with flooding, said that you must have a flooding resilience committee for bond rating purposes, insurance purposes, and all of that. So I'm asking that we send this to the Police, Judicial, and Legal Committee to discuss and bring back to council recommendations to establish that as a committee of this council.
Second.
Well, I can't make a motion, but you can make it.
I've made so many motions tonight. Someone else make.
So moved. All right. We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item A2, discussion regarding Town Council Code of Conduct. Let me point out, items 2, 3, and 4 all are listed as discussion and not action. So if we want to discuss these, we won't be taking action, but it doesn't mean we can't well, we don't need to vote, but just say we'll do this in committee. But I believe these are your items if you would like to discuss.
Yes, and actually, all 3 of these items, I'm happy with sending all 3 of them back to committee. The Council Code of Conduct actually came out of a conversation that Mayor Haney and I had. We were attending an event together, and just sort of a mutual, man, wouldn't it be nice if there was some sort of social media component to our code of conduct that guided our actions online. And so I think that's something that we should discuss further in PJ&L. We don't need a motion though, right? We can just say this so I'd like to send that to PJ&L. The Nurdle spills, this was actually arose from a conversation I had with Councilwoman Sarah Church over on Sullivan's Island. So there was a big Nurdle spill in August, and the Nurdles are still washing up on Sullivan's Island, and they have not cleaned up. And according to Charleston Waterkeeper, they're kind of coming up all over in the waterways. There is also a $60 million project to expand the Nurdle processing capability of in Monk's Corner, which I think is potentially going to impact our waterways significantly, because the Nurdles are very lightweight little plastic pellets that are the building blocks of plastics, and the wind will blow them into the waters. And I just wanted to but I'm not sure which committee this would go to. PJ, would it be PJ&L? Okay, well, sending it to PJ&L. And the same thing with humane confinement of dogs. I've been working with the SC State Humane Society on someone tethered their dog during Dorian and had the dog outside during Dorian. So people saw the dog, and the dog was rescued. The dog is in a new home, but there is action being taken to try and get a state-level tethering rule in place, but at the same time, they're working with local municipalities, and I believe some other local municipalities have had things, not just about tethering dogs, but currently, like if you see a child in a hot car and you break the window, you're not civilly liable for breaking that window. But if you see a dog in a hot car and you break the window to rescue the dog in the heat of summer, you are civilly liable for that window. There's no Good Samaritan law for rescuing a dog, so or like a pet that's in there. So that was something. So let's send it to PJ now.
Okay. All right, thanks. There is no council old business. Item C is executive session. If we were to go into executive session, it would be for legal and contractual for consideration to approve an economic development incentive grant. And 2 would be for personnel matters, consideration of applications submitted to serve on the Culture, Arts, and Pride Commission. Is there a motion that we go into executive session for the reasons published?
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. We are in discussion. Any discussion? Let me mention that if after we vote, council may take action on any item, including any subsection of any section listed on an executive session agenda or discussed in an executive session during a properly noticed meeting. All in favor of the motion to go into executive session for the reasons published and stated, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are in executive session. Thank you.
Where do we go? You see him?
I can draw on it.
See it right there? Look, my earring.
Oh, gotcha.
Oh, thank you.
He's got it.
Thank you so much. That thing flew.
You're gonna get into an argument.
Do we need to bring anything? Do we bring anything with us?
Nice Kevin, really too, buddy. Go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Push the chairs in, so we'll have it. How are you tonight?
Good. Christine? Yes, ma'am. Fix the seating arrangements. Mayor? The mayor? Is there like a particular reason why these seats are? I was just curious. No reason.
Short people have to sit next to me.
Oh, really?
No, seriously, because Tom O'Rourke used to sit here with his big long legs and his big feet. And one time he unplugged my computer. And he was just shuffling his feet around and he caught the cord. So from now on, it's like, well, the short people have to sit down here.
Hey, as you guys, do this, make sure you guys get a group picture this.
Yeah, we
for the paper.
We definitely will.
Good.
And for us, we don't do it so they were all in December, so
Yeah. Well, yes, I told James before he bought that Atlanta. Now he's doing insurance, but, he every time I say something, he's, do you ever see the chief? Do you ever see the chief? Where do you get your cord now? Is he somewhere else to get it? No. Cause Atlantic closed.
Oh, Atlantic, yeah.
Game and tackle.
Yeah. You know, bunch of over here, yeah, because I get my kernel corn over here from him,
Now, okay.
grows. And actually, it's out of Alamo gentleman who, he picks it up for us on College Park Road. They got the cob corn here, so I just go straight to him and over here from kernel.
We saw this weekend, we saw 12 deer Saturday morning. Bucks and, well, days, but we, they were so far. They were freezing, so.
Tomorrow be a good day to go, though.
I know. I can't go except for the weekend. Yeah.
All right, take care.
Have a good one. Night. What's up?
Oh, no.
Can I have this? I'm kidding.
Where's our 10 o'clock? It's here, but I guess it's.
Oh, I put it right back in the bag.
Thank you, ma'am.
You can call this.
sure he's got a 2946
Wrong seat.
Old habits.
Old habits. I was heading back to my old seat.
Move. Clerk.
That has to be weird. Yeah, you get used to one side to the other.
Well, you know,
All
the
right.
Snowden kids go to Bell Hall. Right. So that's, yeah, he
Everybody's here? We have reconvened from executive session. Please note the time. There were no votes taken, no action taken. However, there may be a motion resulting.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I would like to make a motion in regard to a legal and contractual matter that we discussed, considering approval for an economic development incentive grant.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Any other motions to come out of executive session? Hearing none, the next item is to adjourn. So we stand adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
What time is it? How long did it take? Yeah.